Well, let's get into this discussion now. We've got Resh, Mehta and Aleck Kuhudzai. Kuhudzai is Aleck's in Cape Town. I'm just going to call you by your first name, Aleck, if you don't mind. But let's pick up with ladies first. Resh, the whole human trafficking story is extremely complex, but maybe just give us your organization. What is it that you do?
I represent the International Organization for Migration, and our main mandate is to assist the government and to assist migrants with safe and orderly migration. Now, one of the offshoots of migration is a terrible topic of human trafficking. It's a crime that is international. It's all over the world, and it's basically the buying and selling of human beings for the purpose of making a profit.
It's like slavery.
It's like it is another
Africa's
name
got
for
a terrible history in this regard.
It's another name for slavery, absolutely. It's the buying and selling of human beings, and then you make use of them. Yes.
I remember reading a piece a little while ago that the incentive for a Mozambican to illegally enter South Africa, for instance, because of the different GDPs, was 16 times the incentive for a Mexican to enter the United States. The United States cannot stop the Mexicans from going in. Clearly there's no chance in this context as well. But what you're talking about is actually not the willing migration, but something perhaps very different.
Okay. In order to distinguish human trafficking from any other crime, there has to be three elements present. There has to be the act of recruitment, transportation, transfer, harboring, then followed by the means. How was this act committed? Was it there coercion, force, deception, fraud? Very often a person will accompany the trafficker willingly because they have been deceived into believing that there's a job waiting for them at the other end, at the destination. So there's the act, there's the means, and then the purpose, the whole intent behind the act and the means used to carry out the act is the purpose, which is exploitation. And exploitation 99% of the time is for money, but sometimes it is for getting the services of a person. You know, using a person as a domestic help, or in a farm as forced labor, or in the mines.
Well, as in the sex trade.
Yes,
that's enormous.
Absolutely.
Let's bring in Aleck now in Cape Town. From your perspective, Aleck, are these people who are trafficked into the country, I would presume they come in illegally?
Yeah, that would seem the case, because I think, and it's actually quite easy for people to be trafficked into the country. For example, in the case of refugees or asylum seekers, people that are willing to lodge applications for asylum, it's very easy for them to be tricked or lured, because South Africa has a liberal system that allows them to mingle in the society, integrate in the community, and work and study. So they'll just basically be enticed and be promised work, you know, study, place to stay, and then you compare that with the lifestyle you'd get, for example, in Botswana, where you're put in a camp, in Mozambique, where you're put in a camp, or Zimbabwe, then you say, I'm definitely going to South Africa. You get into the border, then everything changes. That application you're supposed to bring for asylum or refugee, it never materializes, because that guy takes you up and then he uses you for whatever he's brought you to the country for.
So what happens to those people? They've clearly entered the country illegally. They must be aware that they're entering the country illegally because they're paying to get here. What happens once they arrive?
Okay, I'll speak from the perspective of a normal asylum seeker, not people that are trafficked. Because what happens is the country allows any illegal person in the country 14 days, now been reduced to 5 days, to lodge a formal application for asylum, regardless of whether, you know, you've overstayed. As long as you can prove good cause why you failed to lodge a proper application in time, you are allowed the opportunity, and it's also been confirmed by the Supreme Court of Appeal in a famous code, a sumo. You are allowed the opportunity to bring an application for asylum or for refugee status, but it starts with the asylum. I cannot comment on people that are trafficked, because I would assume that what happens is the moment that the war ring is discovered, then those rights come into effect. They are given the choice of either legalizing their stay, or perhaps in other instances probably charged for that.
Mesh, I don't understand this. So if you get into a situation where you pay someone to come into the country because there's a job waiting for you, you arrive here, it's all illegal, you can then lodge an application to stay.
No, can I just get back to your initial question? Are all trafficked victims illegal? No. You can enter South Africa legally and still be trafficked. Like, for example, we have a lot of Thai victims of trafficking in South Africa, More often than not, you find them in the massage parlors. I'm not saying all massage parlors have trafficked victims, but more often than not, it could be sexual exploitation, it could be forced labor. So they are promised a job in South Africa and Thailand, okay, by a recruiter. Now remember, human trafficking is organized crime, okay? It can take place within a country and across international borders. That's why the UN has passed a convention on this issue. So a person is promised a job in another country, say Thailand, for example. Their visas are arranged, passports are arranged. They come into the country legally. They come into the country.
But you can't get a maths professor to come to South Africa. You can't get a scientist, but you can get a massage person.
You can get anyone to come into South Africa by promising them a job legally.
No, but I'm talking about Home Affairs.
Home Affairs.
Home Affairs now says you have to go through the Department of Labour, which will first of all issue that visa. How's it done legally? Is it done backhand legally?
No, it's legal and it's illegal. Okay, legally now with the new immigration laws, I think they have scarce skills that are welcome into the country, and if you don't fall within that, then obviously you don't get a visa. So maybe this will make the traffickers change their recruitment methods and change their idea of who needs to.
How much? Let's say this lovely young lady at the massage parlor who's can't hardly speak English.
To give you
Thailand.
the broad figure that was put out by the US. US has a tip, trafficking in persons. How do I say it? A group, and every year they go around the world to every country, finding out how bad and how big the trafficking is in that country. According to the tip report, $32 billion is an average annual income of the trafficking syndicate in the world, internationally, $32 billion.
That's a big number. Bring it down to something that we can all understand. Whether the lady who comes from Thailand, who's been offered a job in a massage parlor in South Africa through organized crime or whatever, what would she pay to get here?
Okay, assuming she pays 7,000 to get into the country.
7,000 rand.
Yeah, sometimes 7,000 rand. Assuming she pays 7,000 rand to the trafficker in Thailand to get into the country, or say $7,000. Once she reaches South Africa, there's something called debt bondage, where she is debt bonded now, and the 7,000 is then changed into 70,000, and she's told that you now owe us 70,000 for all our efforts. We got you the passport, we got you the visa, we got you an air ticket, we brought you into the country, we're finding you a job. You pay us 7,000, and then we will give you back your passport. As soon as she reaches her destination, her passport's taken away from her. We will give you back your passport, and then you can go as and where you want.
Aleck, just to bring you in here very quickly, in a situation like this, clearly the person who's been trafficked is at a disadvantage. Can they then go forward to the authorities and say, I want to go back home?
Yes, of course, but remember, in this particular instance, my organization only deals with refugees and asylum seekers, and we are an implementing partner of the UNHCR. In instances like this, I'm sure after fully cooperating with the authorities, the UNHCR would take the liberty of repatriating that person back to their home country. But I would also assume in the case of a normal migrant, that is a person who's been promised employment, even though the documentations are in order and they feel that the conditions and terms of agreement are not as per the original agreement, they are very free to approach the authorities and to make arrangements for them to be returned back to their countries.
The problem is you're dealing with organized crime, and it takes a very brave person, particularly if you're on your own in a foreign country, to go up against organized crime. Do you have many instances of this?
Well, when I was actually speaking to your colleague yesterday, I actually advised him of a colleague of ours. We're kind of organization that work together. She was actually dealing with a similar case almost like this, like 2 months ago, and I actually felt she was going to be the appropriate person to address on the human trafficking issue because she dealt with that. But I've never, in my experience, I have not yet come across a case of human trafficking, mainly because I deal with refugees and asylum seekers.
Resh, just to close off from your side, is there any way that someone who has been trafficked can at least get back home or get out of the clutches of organized crime?
It's actually, this is a subject that takes a lot of time to talk about, but more often than not, victims who are brought into the country and are trafficked fear for their lives. They fear for their lives, they fear for their families' lives, they are force-fed drugs, they become addicted to drugs. So there's a whole lot of reasons why they do not go and seek assistance from the police. They also fear the police because of corruption. As a result of which they get stuck where they are in the trafficking web. But if they do get rescued or they happen to escape, then there are organizations such as IOM, such as the government of South Africa is working very effectively towards creating a safe haven for victims of trafficking. They've just passed the law which is going to be implemented on the 1st of October, as you said. So yes, a victim of trafficking can be rescued and can be repatriated back home if it is safe for her, or into another country. There is light at the end of the tunnel, but that tunnel is very long and it's very dark.
Well, more strength to your efforts in this regard. And I think that it's one of those subjects we don't like talking about these things. It's the underbelly of society, but it is our day today where we're focusing on immigration. It's a theme that on the one hand, at the top end of the market, there's concerns that not enough people are coming in, but if you have a look further down the scale, it clearly is an area where organized crime is rampant. And don't think that what Resh, Mehta and Aleck were telling us is just out of the blue. There's a wonderful book called Illicit, written by Moises Naim. You can go and Google it or go and buy it from Amazon. It'll give you a terrific insight into how organized crime works, and particularly in this area of human trafficking, the scourge of the modern age. That was Resh Mehta from the International Organization for Migration and Aleck Kuhudzai from the Agency for Refugee Education.